Thousands of people have mysteriously vanished in America's wilderness. Under strange and unexplainable circumstances. Most cases remain unsolved. What happened? Where did they go? Locations unknown.
Thousands of people have mysteriously vanished in America's wilderness. Join us as we dive into the deep end of the unexplainable and try to piece together what happened. You are listening to Locations Unknown.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Locations Unknown. I'm your co-host, Joe Irado, and with me, as always, is a guy who can defeat 100 gorillas with one hand tied behind his back, Mike Vandebogart.
Oh, thank you, Joe, and thank you once again to all of our amazing listeners for tuning in. Just a couple of announcements before we go in here. First, I'd like to give a thank you to new Patreon members. So thank you to Katie Silvas and Jacob Budke.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for supporting the show, and we really appreciate the support, and hopefully we'll be doing another Patreon-only members call after the one we bungled during the live stream.
We tried our best.
We tried our best, but we screwed it up.
Yeah, we had way too many things running at once.
Yeah, that's that kind of show you need like an actual crew to like man the board.
I will say, I'll give us credit for us doing it on our own and having that much success.
Yeah. No, I mean,
but they couldn't hear stuff. We couldn't hear them. By the time I figured it out with the phone, it was already too late.
Yeah, there was a lot of dead time while we were trying to fix stuff, but it was fun. Joe and I are both exhausted from doing this. Almost 5 hours of talking.
Yes.
So, also,
nobody wants that.
No. If you want to call the show or text the show, you can call 208-391-6913. Check out some of the other podcasts on our network: Peanut Butter and Mountain Podcast, Off the Trails, The Weirdos We Know Who Runs This Park, and Crime Off the Grid. If you want to support the show, you can join our Patreon account. We have YouTube memberships, premium subscriptions on Apple and Spreaker, and someday I will get the new store up and running. Stay tuned for that.
Sunday, you said? On Sunday?
No, someday.
Oh, someday.
Someday.
Not Sunday.
No, not Sunday.
All right, everybody, let's gear up and get out to explore Locations Unknown. It's the 6th century. Britain's a chaotic mess. Roman rule's gone, Saxons are invading, and a warrior king fights his last battle. Then poof, he's gone, whisked away to a mysterious place called Avalon, never to be seen again. Did this king really vanish into the wilderness? Or is his whole story just a legend? Join us this week as we investigate the strange disappearance of King Arthur.
It's not every day we have a king on the show.
Not every day we have a king on the show, and I didn't know the backstory of King Arthur. All I knew was the 90s movie,
Yeah,
A Kid in King Arthur's Court.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the extent of it. And the cartoon King Arthur.
And then the Son of Anarchy, King Arthur.
Yeah, I didn't even finish that one. It was a terrible movie.
So yeah, we're gonna talk about a lot of it was an awful movie.
I couldn't finish it. It was one of those
Yeah.
movies where I kept falling asleep, and eventually I was like, you know what? I'm not even gonna watch the rest.
And I've watched some awful movies like Nick Cage's The Knowing.
Excuse me, every Nick Cage movie ever made is amazing. I expect you to take that back.
Nothing better than Con Air. That was his.
Con Air is an amazing movie. Don't you dare.
Close second was Face Off.
Face Off is a great movie.
I want to take this face off.
The Rock.
Okay, The Rock.
The Rock is a great movie.
That's a quiet banger of a movie.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah, like nobody knows about it.
No, or remembers it.
Yeah, I do.
I do too.
I'm a huge Nick Cage fan.
And the guy, Sean Connery. is in it.
Sean Connery.
Yeah. He was kind of phoning it in it by that point.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh.
he made his money.
Yeah. He was just there for the
There's
check.
lots of other great Nick Cage movies.
I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to think of some, but yeah, I mean, he's a great actor. He just, you got to respect the man. Just
He's in everything.
he's in it for the money.
Yep. It's a job.
You got a script and you got $10 million or whatever it is to pay him.
Boom.
He's in.
Boom.
So
All right. So, introduction to the mystery of King Arthur. Now that we're off the Nicolas Cage topic, imagine a wounded king, fresh from brutal battle, carried through misty marshes to a hidden island called Avalon, a place no one can find. He vanishes, leaving only a promise to return. Where did King Arthur go? And what was the mysterious Avalon like in the 6th century, when a real king might have walked its wilds? So, who is King Arthur? King Arthur is a legendary British leader central to the Arthurian legend, portrayed as a heroic king who united Britain against invaders into the late 5th and early 6th century. He is depicted as the ruler of Camelot, a mythical court leading the Knights of the Round Table, a group of noble warriors sworn to justice and chivalry. Born to the Uther Pendragon, King of Britain, and Igraine, Duchess of Cornwall, through a magical deception orchestrated by the wizard Merlin, according to Geoffrey of Monmouth, Historia Regum Britanniae, circa 1136. All the words I know from 6th century Britain.
yes.
Conceived at Tintagel, Cornwall, a coastal stronghold, and raised in secrecy by Sir Ector to protect him from his enemies. Married to Queen Guinevere, whose affair with Sir Lancelot, Arthur's greatest knight, leads to strife and Camelot's downfall in later romances. This is from Creton de Troyes de Troyes.
Creighton de Troyes.
Creton de Troyes. That's the book Lancelot, circa 1170s. Advised by Merlin, a wizard who shapes his destiny until Merlin's own mysterious disappearance. Well, he's a wizard.
Yeah.
So if a wizard disappears, I don't really would call it mysterious. It'd
Yeah.
be more par for the course.
Yeah. You're probably right.
Yeah. Betrayed by his nephew/son, I'm not going to dive into that. Mordred, born of an incestuous union with his sister Morgause in some versions, who usurps the throne. Mortally wounded at the Battle of Camlan, circa 537, per Annales Brii, fighting Mordred. Instead of dying, he is taken to the mystical island of Avalon to heal, with a prophecy of his return as the once and future king. So Avalon is often linked to Glastonbury, Somerset, marks his enigmatic vanishing, blending history and myth. So some key traits and achievements. Renowned for uniting warring British tribes and defending against the Saxon invaders, notably winning the Battle of Badon in 500, as noted in Historia Britannica. I can't say that word. Britonum. That's like the word you can't. That's my word.
Yeah.
Britonum.
Good
Oh,
thing
no,
you
I can say it now.
probably will never have to say it again after this episode.
That maybe not,
Yeah.
whatever. It embodies the ideals of honor, courage, and justice, fostering equality among his knights via the Round Table, a symbol of unity introduced in later texts like Robert de Born's Merlin. First appears in Warris's Roman de Brute and is featured by Creton de Troyes. I can't say that word again. Crichton in 1170s. A skilled fighter wielding the magical sword Excalibur, given by the Lady of the Lake, which enhances his prowess and legitimacy as king. I am just thinking of all of the Holy Grail quotes every time I'm reading all these names for Monty Python. He leads his knights in seeking the Grail, a sacred relic, through only pure knights like Galadid, succeeded as described in the Vulgate cycle, 13th century. So who was Merlin besides just a wizard? Merlin is a legendary wizard and advisor to King Arthur in Arthurian legend, known for his magical powers, prophecy, and wisdom. He first appears in Geoffrey's Monmouth, Historia Regum Britanniae, as Merlinus, half-human, half-supernatural figure, born of a mortal woman and incubus, granting him mystical abilities. Key roles: he orchestrates Arthur's birth by magically aiding Uther Pendragon, guides Arthur's rise as king, and shapes events throughout his life. Depicted as a seer, shapeshifter, and enchanter, often living in forests or caves, blending Celtic, Druidic, and Christian mystic traits.
Totally sounds like a real guy.
Yeah, it totally sounds like a whole real scenario and everything. You did say it was going to be difficult to get through this. I did not know how difficult it was going to be to get through it, but
And a little inside baseball.
I barely did.
I have the phonetic spelling in here, and I was joking with Joe before we started. I said, even the phonetic spelling is hard.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Yeah,
I'm actually
trying. So what is the mystery of Arthur's disappearance? So let's jump right into first the mystery of Avalon. So in Arthurian legend, Avalon is the mystical place where Arthur is taken after his final battle, per writings from around 537. And this was to heal, not die. It's described as an island possibly led by enchantress Morgan Le Fay, where magic reigns. So Glastonbury, there's a Glastonbury connection. So since the 12th century, Glastonbury in Somerset has been the leading candidate for Avalon. Medieval monks claimed to find Arthur and Guinevere's grave at Glastonbury Abbey in 1190, cementing the link. So why Glastonbury? So in the 6th century, this place was surrounded by marshes and wetlands, making it an island in the Somerset levels. The Glastonbury Tor, a prominent hill, stood like a beacon in this watery wilderness. So the landscape of the area, it was vast, low-lying wetland, often flooded with patches of reed beds, alder swamps, and shallow lakes. Glastonbury was a near island accessible by boat or narrow causeway through the mire. The Glastonbury Tor is a steep 158-meter hill rising from the flats, crowned with scrub or sparse trees. I just lost my spot. Hold on.
This keeps happening to you.
I know. It was a natural landmark, possibly sacred, with springs like the Chalice Well, adding mystical vibes. The surrounding area was dense forest, oak, ash, and hazel, fringed the wetlands with rolling hills beyond. Paths were muddy, tracks easily swallowed by the floods or fog. The environment, like I said, wild and remote. It was soggy, untamed frontier, thick mud, frogs, sudden mist that could disorient travelers, wolves and boar roamed nearby woods. And the weather, 6th century this time, this area climate was cool and wet with frequent drizzle or fog, making the levels feel like a place where the world ended. And the storms could turn the marshes into death traps. Human presence in this area. So Glastonbury was a small community, likely Roman British or early Christian, living on raised ground or wooden platforms. The Tor may have been a ritual site, possibly with a pre-Christian shrine or early church. Locals in the area would have fished, hunted, and traded. Pottery shards show Mediterranean imports. The area was a crossroads, but its isolation made it feel otherworldly. Archaeology, so excavations in the area show 5th and 6th century occupation. There were timber structures, tools, and Christian artifacts, hinting at a significant but small settlement. So the evolution of Avalon over time through literature is pretty interesting. So, it starts with Geoffrey of Monmouth. He wrote a book in 1136 where he said Arthur is carried to the Insula Avellanis after Camlan by unnamed figures. The text is silent on his death, suggesting survival or supernatural escape, setting the stage for the mystery. Then in 1150, Geoffrey's Vita Merlini expands Avalon as a paradisical island ruled by Morgan Le Fay, a sorceress, where Arthur is tended by 9 magical sisters. It's described as a land of eternal spring with no sickness or death, hinting at a Celtic-inspired otherworld. Then, in the 1170s, we have Creighton de Torres. Early romances mention Avalon indirectly as a mystical place tied to Arthur's legend, though focus shifts to knights like Lancelot. In the 13th century, we have the Vulgate cycle. It portrays Avalon as a hidden sanctuary where Arthur is taken by Morgan and other ladies. The Questel de Saint Grail suggests his survival with no clear tomb, reinforcing the ambiguity. And Joe, you've been looking at some interesting stuff on the screen. Let everybody know what you've been looking at.
Pictures of Avalon, obviously artist renditions, because we don't have a lot of pictures going on. But just they have maps and other things that are in here that show essentially what, like, the stories had laid it out.
Yeah.
And then, paintings and drawings of King Arthur himself.
How do they depict him in the ancient pictures?
Let's see. Let me pull this up again. I had him pulled up. King Arthur. I'll get rid of Avalon.
So
he's got little curly hairs on the side.
Kind of what you would imagine a British king of that time would look like.
Yeah. Beard coming down. He was in the Sons of Anarchy.
not Charlie Hun?
No, not Charlie Hun. That's a joke.
Hunman or whatever his name is.
Hunman, whatever.
Okay.
He doesn't look happy.
He looks pretty intense.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to cross him.
Yeah. Especially because he got a wizard. Do you know, I do know which one of his knights came up with the round table.
Which one?
Circumference. All right, I'm sorry, everybody.
Okay, getting back into a little bit more of the...
Getting away from
all right,
that.
Moving on. So, 1485, Thomas Mallory wrote a book, and in that book he wrote that Arthur is borne away by Morgan Le Fay and other women to Avalon after Camlan. A hermit later reports a tomb, but Mallory notes some men say Arthur is not dead, preserving the mystery of his fate. So these texts over time vary. Some imply Arthur lives in Avalon, others hint at his death. The vague location, an island shrouded in mist, and a lack of closure fuels the speculation. So there's a lot of Celtic influences in the story of Avalon. So it's depicted as an idyllic island with apple orchards, healing waters, and magical inhabitants. It's often called Insula Pomorum, which means island of apples or fortunate island. This all likely draws from Celtic otherworlds like the Irish Turnaog, which means land of youth, or Welsh Annwn, realms where heroes dwell immortal, untouched by time. These parallels suggest Avalon is a supernatural destination, not a geographical one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so like he could have died in battle?
And
went to Avalon?
Yeah. But a lot of the texts don't say that he died in battle. They say that he lives on and will be coming, returning. There's a lot of... It's interesting. This story seems to be mixing a lot of, obviously, Celtic lore with kind of Christianity almost. I mean, there's a lot of kind of, there's some similarities to the story of, Jesus and all that.
Like returning from a mystical place.
Yeah. Like it's interesting how these stories kind of sometimes merge different religions. And so, what was Morgan Le Fay's role in all of this? So Morgan Le Fay, like we said, was a sorceress and Arthur's half-sister, which was described in later texts. she's central to the Avalon mystery. In Vita Merlini, she rules Avalon using magic to heal Arthur. In Mallory's books, she leads the boat that carries him away. Early texts portray Morgan as a benevolent person, a healer with Celtic goddess traits. Morgan's involvement raises questions. Was she preserving Arthur for his return, or did her magic bind him to Avalon forever? Her presence ties Avalon to the supernatural intrigue of this story. And there are possible alternate locations. So, I'm sorry, my microphone is falling off.
Yeah, you are just like constantly adjusting that thing.
We'll cut all this out.
No, you won't. Just stop touching it.
Well, no, it was like literally falling off.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was like unscrewed.
Oh, interesting. Probably because you touch it so much.
Probably. Possible alternate locations. So one of the locations is Bardsey Island in Wales. So this is a remote 1.8 square kilometer island off the Llyn Peninsula, known as the Island of 20,000 Saints in Welsh tradition. Its isolation and Celtic spiritual history make it a candidate for Avalon. Linked to Merlin in some folklore, but it also lacks Arthurian evidence. Its misty sea-bound setting fits the hidden island motif, though. Another place is El de Val in Brittany. This is a small island off the Breton coast. Linguistically tied to Avalon, French Arthurian traditions suggest a continental link, but it's less prominent than Glastonbury. Another island is Mount Etna in Sicily. There's an obscure reference in 9th century writings that claims Arthur survived in a Sicilian cave, likely a medieval conflation with other myths. It's not widely accepted, but adds to the mystery. And some say there's just no fixed location. So some scholars argue Avalon is purely mythical, a literary construct with no real-world counterpart, inspired by Celtic other worlds. This view emphasizes its role as a narrative device to explain Arthur's absence. So, very interesting. We can't even settle on the location. And the rest of the story of King Arthur is even more confusing. So, the next big mystery is Camelot. So, that was where he held court. And I'm sure everyone's heard of Camelot.
Yes.
That's more familiar. And I'm trying
On
to...
second thought, let's not go to Camelot. It's a silly place.
There we go.
I'm gonna go home and watch that movie.
I'm going to have to, yeah.
I'm gonna fall asleep in the middle of it, but it's gonna be a great one to fall asleep to.
So, Camelot is the legendary court of King Arthur. First name in Creighton de Torres, Lancelot, the Knight of the Cart, 1170s. It's depicted as a grand fortress or city where Arthur holds court with the Knights of the Round Table. Earlier texts from 1136 mention Arthur's court, but don't name Camelot, suggesting it's a later literary addition, possibly inspired by real or mythical strongholds. Its location is unspecified in medieval sources. It's described vaguely as a fortified place in Britain, leading to centuries of speculation about its whereabouts or even if it existed. So, the mystery of Camelot's absence from historical records makes it a lost place. Was it a real fortress that vanished from history, a composite of multiple sites, or purely fictional? The lack of archaeological evidence directly tied to Arthur or a place called Camelot fuels the debate, with some scholars arguing it symbolizes an unattainable golden age rather than a physical site. Its disappearance also mirrors Arthur's own vanishing to Avalon. Both are central in the legend, yet concrete evidence eludes everyone, so it's kind of blending history and myth. So where do they think Camelot was? They have some speculation on places. So one of the leading locations is Cadbury Castle. So Cadbury Castle is an Iron Age hill fort in South Cadbury, Somerset, covering 18 acres with massive earthwork ramparts overlooking a rural landscape of fields and woodlands. Are you looking at a picture of it now?
Yeah, this is it right here. What's left of it, at least.
Yeah. So, I mean, that kind of sounds like how Camelot was described.
Yeah.
So the actual castle's not really there anymore.
Well, that's you always wonder too. Like, is it possible they were all based on real places and they renamed things in storytelling?
Yeah.
So, this is Camelot, but it was actually
Think of
means
how
something else.
stories were told back then. Not many people read.
Well, almost okay. If we're gonna go, let's go on the road that it's real. What a great counterintelligence thing to do.
Explain.
Like. So if your enemy hears that you're in Camelot and Camelot
yeah.
doesn't exist, like
It's
they're gonna
really
be
like Cadbury Castle.
exactly. They're
Yeah.
gonna be looking for something that doesn't exist.
That makes sense.
And I mean, not really, but
Well,
it could.
You think of how information spread back then.
Yeah, word of mouth.
Word of mouth. Most people couldn't read. So, it's like the telephone game,
It was the telephone game.
especially over hundreds of years. I mean, the story there are probably so many variations of King Arthur lost to history that we'll never even know about, just
Yeah.
people told. So, like I said, Cadbury Castle is the leading candidate for Camelot. Excavations in 1966 through 1970 uncovered 5th and 6th century occupation, including a large timber hall, pottery from Mediterranean trade, and refortified ramparts suggesting a wealthy Dark Age stronghold. The link to Arthur, so local tradition dating back to at least the 16th century, identifies Cadbury as Camelot, possibly due to its strategic position and imposing presence. In 1540, John Leland noted villagers called it Camelate, or Arthur's Palace. The site's 5th and 6th century activity aligns with Arthur's supposed era, with evidence of a high-status leader, imported goods, defensive upgrades. However, like everything about the story, no direct proof. Inscriptions naming Arthur confirms it as Camelot. And, looking at the pictures, it has kind of a haunting landscape. So Cadbury Castle sits atop a 153-meter hill. It's surrounded by steep slopes and dense woods of oak and ash, with mist often pooling in from the valley below. The ramparts, overgrown with grass, create a labyrinth, kind of an eerie atmosphere. In Arthur's time, the hill fort would have been a bustling hub, timber halls, thatched roofs, and watchtowers. Even though it was isolated, there would have been forests and marshes limiting access at night. Flickering fires and howling winds would enhance the mystique of the area. And visitors describe the site as frozen in time, with its silent earthworks evoking a lost kingdom. The surrounding countryside, dotted with hedgerows and streams, feels untouched, amplifying the sense of a vanished world.
So, is it fair to say that a hill is frozen in time? Because I mean, what I'm looking at is just a hill.
Yeah,
That
but I mean,
a
they've
thing
done.
used to be built on.
Yeah, and that picture doesn't. There might be things that.
I'll find some more pictures because right now I'm not feeling it.
Yeah, look up. Just type in Cadbury Castle.
That's what I did before.
Oh, really?
I was seeing if there's a link to the Cadbury eggs.
Probably.
Oh, there's a well thing. So like, I see where it was.
Yeah.
Like, oh, maybe sure it's pulled up.
Were you not sharing any of that?
No, I wasn't originally. All right, let's see. Like, okay, all right. I wouldn't call that frozen in time. I'd call it a ruin.
Yeah.
But I'm splitting hairs.
Okay. So there's a lot of paranormal lore with Camelot. So we have local legends. So Somerset folklore claims Arthur and his knights sleep beneath Cadbury Castle in a shallow hill, ready to ride out in Britain's hour of need. This mirrors Celtic myth of sleeping heroes. There's spectral sightings in the area. This sounds like a great place. Evan should go do some ghost hunting.
Yes.
A 20th century account describes a farmer hearing clashing swords near the hill fort at midnight with no visible source. Another tale from the 1960s claims a hiker saw a knight in silver vanish into the mist on the hill's summit. And then there's, supernatural context. So the hill fort's isolation and ancient aura fuel stories like these, with some linking them to pre-Christian beliefs about sacred hills and gateways to the other world. Just quickly before we get into our next mystery, there's a couple other possible locations. So Caerleon in Wales, it's a Roman fortress with 5th and 6th century remains mentioned in Welsh tradition. And if you want to look that up, it's Caerleon.
Caerleon Castle.
Oh, and there we got.
Yeah, this is frozen in time.
Yeah, the castle's still
Yeah,
there.
it's still standing. It's there.
Roman structures still standing.
Yep.
So, like I said, this is from the 5th, 6th century. It's mentioned in Welsh tradition, and its amphitheater is speculated to be the Round Table, but evidence is thin, of course. Another location is Winchester, Hampshire. So Mallory identifies Winchester as Camelot, possibly due to its medieval significance and a 14th century Round Table artifact. However, 6th century archaeology here is sparse. So
Now we're talking.
the debate rages on. So Cadbury Castle's Dark Age fortifications and folklore make it the strongest candidate, but the mystery to this day still persists on where Camelot was. Did it even exist? So very interesting. The next mystery that we're going to get into, and I think is the most interesting one, is the Holy Grail. And this has been in lots of different pop culture. Weren't they looking for it in one of the Indiana Jones movies?
Yeah, it was the Raiders of the Raiders of the Lost Ark, is it?
I don't remember. But I remember one of them, they were looking for it.
Yes, because they did.
And like Nazis had it or something.
No, they had to like drink from it. And when you chose poorly, I think that was Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I'll have to watch that too. I haven't seen that.
That's a great one.
So, for those of you who do not know what the Holy Grail is, the Grail first appears in Creighton de Torres' Percival, or the Story of the Grail, circa 1180. It's described as a mysterious, radiant vessel carried in a procession, possibly a dish or cup with spiritual significance. Later texts from around 1200 identified as a cup used by Jesus at the Last Supper, later catching his blood at the crucifixion. It was then brought to Britain by Joseph of Arrhythmia. Probably got that wrong.
Like heart arrhythmia?
No, it's Arimethea.
Yeah, I don't know.
So then
You
later,
got it.
I got it. Later in the 13th century, the Vulgate Cycle and another book by Mallory in 1485 cement the Grail as a sacred relic, a symbol of divine grace, only attainable by the purest of knights. So the Grail is a vanished artifact because it eludes all but a few. Galahad disappearing from the world after the quest ends. Its physical absence, no historical relic matches it. It makes it a puzzle. Was it real? Was it a metaphor? No one knows.
It wasn't Raiders of the Lost Ark. It was The Last Crusade.
Oh, okay. That makes that is who's the other actor in that?
That's what's his name from The Rock?
Sean Connery.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, remember spoiler alert, and I don't care because it's like from the 80s, when he uses the cup to heal him.
Oh,
I don't remember that part.
Boy, it's been so long since I've seen that one.
Yeah, this scene right here. Where he has to pick the cup. They have to like pick the one that they think Jesus drank from.
Okay.
And then the one guy chooses poorly.
Chooses poorly.
You've chosen poorly. I won't show the image.
So the quest of Arthur's knights to find the Holy Grail kind of scatters them across the British wilderness, with many of them never returning. And so who were the knights that disappeared? So in the Vulgate, Arthur's knights undertake the Grail quest, venturing into the forest, moors, and remote castles. The quest was perilous, with only Galahad, Percival, and Bors succeeding. So Galahad, he was the purest knight. He finds the Grail in the castle of Corbenic, but after a divine vision, he ascends to heaven, vanishing from the mortal world. His disappearance is mystical, not tragic, but leaves no trace. Percival seeks the Grail but fails initially due to impurity, wandering for years. Later texts have him achieve the Grail and retire as a hermit, effectively disappearing from Camelot. Now, Lancelot was obviously barred from the Grail due to his affair with Guinevere, but so Lancelot roams in despair, lost in the wild landscapes, and nearly dies. He survives but is spiritually lost. So some of the reason why people had such a hard time finding the Grail was because there's a lot of lore that there's supernatural protectors of the Grail. So you've got the Fisher King. So in Creighton de Torres, in Creighton's Vulgate cycle, the Grail is guarded by the Fisher King, a wounded ancient figure in a hidden castle. His eerie presence, sustained by the Grail but suffering, adds a haunting tone as he tests the knight's worthiness. So then you've got the Grail maidens. So the Grail is carried by a mysterious woman, described in Creighton's Percival. She is described as radiant but otherworldly, possibly angelic. Their silent, ghostly processions unnerve knights, hinting at divine or demonic origins. So then you have the spectral guardians. So the Vulgate cycle describes knights encountering visions, flaming spears, shadowy knights, or even demonic figures guarding the Grail's path. These apparitions kill or drive mad unworthy seekers. And then some say there's demonic forces guarding it. So Mallory describes notes that the devils or fiends masquerading as guides, luring knights to death in traps, cursed chapels or cliffs. A knight in the one of the books sees a vision of hell after touching a false Grail. So that kind of goes back to the Indiana Jones movie.
Where his face melts off.
Yeah.
I know he ages.
What is that?
That is a spectral guardian.
Oh, that's terrifying.
I think it's awesome. I want to go as that for Halloween.
Spectral.
I'll go as that to Electric Forest.
There you go.
I'll win Electric Forest.
Walk around with the Grail and
Yes. Like there, people will get it.
yeah.
It's an eclectic crowd.
So later medieval tales from the 14th century romances and add sinister protectors like spectral warriors or cursed landscapes, forests that swallow men, tied to the Grail's sanctity. Some claim the Grail's light burns impure eyes, which is a chilling deterrent. So there's a lot of terrifying things that allegedly guard the Grail, so I don't know that I'd want to go looking for it. So is there any historical context to the Holy Grail? So
My guess is there's got to be some.
well, the origins of the debate. So the Grail may stem from Celtic mythology blended with Christian relics. No physical Grail has been found supporting its mythical status. Glastonbury, linked to Grail lore, has 6th century Christian artifacts like crosses, but no Grail evidence. The Chalice Wells red waters are tied to Grail myth, but lack historical proof. Obviously, the Grail has had huge cultural impact. The Grail's mystery reflects medieval fascination with relics and quests, with its vanishing act symbolizing unattainable purity. The knight's disappearance echo real-world losses in crusades or pilgrimages. So, before we get into some of the really creepy stories surrounding King Arthur, I just wanted to cover a little bit of the historical debate about King Arthur. So this isn't just a crazy story, mythical story. There is a lot of debate that's gone on. Was he real? Is he a myth? Is it a mixture of historical figures? It could be anything because there's a lot of writing on it, but not a lot of evidence has been found.
Mm-hmm.
So to understand Avalon's role and everything surrounding Arthur, you need to kind of go into the world of this time period. So Britain in the 5th and 6th centuries, it's post-Roman, pre-Saxon, was a dark age. Very few written records, lots of warfare. Arthur emerges in later texts as a leader who unites Britons against invaders, but evidence is very shaky. Early texts from, here's some pro-Arthur the people, theories that say he's real. The earliest mention comes in about 829, which lists Arthur as a war leader winning 12 battles, including Badon Hill, which was around 500. It's not really a biography, but it suggests a historical figure. Then you have Welsh short sources, so the 6th century Welsh poems like Y. Gadadin around 600 mention an Arthur-like warrior, hinting at a real hero whose deeds were exaggerated. The Annales Cambriae around 970 notes Arthur's victory at Badon, which they list as 516, and his death at Camelot at 537. So then you do have some archaeological clues. So sites at Tintagel and Cornwall and Cadbury Castle show 5th and 6th century activity, wealthy settlements that could fit a powerful leader's base. Tintagel's 1998 Artigno slate suggests a name close to Arthur. So some historians propose Arthur was a Romano-British leader, maybe a cavalry commander whose victories were turned into mythology. So now here's the people who think it's a complete myth. So there's no contemporary 5th or 6th century sources that name Arthur. The Historia Britannium is 300 years later, and earlier writers like Gildas, which was around 540, mention Badon, but not Arthur. Exaggeration. So Arthur's feats, killing 960 Saxons single-handedly in the Historia Britannium, sounded legendary but not factual. Welsh tales blend him with Celtic gods and magic. And a lot of people say it was just a literary creation. So by the 12th century, which was the Geoffrey of Monmouth's History Resume Britanniae, around 1136, turns Arthur into a grandiose king with a magical court, likely fictionalizing a kernel of truth or inventing him entirely. So, scholars like David Dumville argue Arthur is a folkloric legend or folkloric figure like Robin Hood, with no solid evidence tying him to a specific person.
Did they figure that about Shakespeare? That he wasn't like an individual person, but a group of writers?
I don't remember.
I'm going to look that up. I remember seeing something like that, and it seemed, well, okay, if it's real, at the time when I heard about it, like, that seems like pretty earth-shattering news.
I think I remember reading that. That's like, that's a theory. I don't know how.
Yeah, I don't know how they came to it. I just saw a headline. So don't take my word on it.
There is a middle ground view of King Arthur. So many experts, like John Morris, suggest Arthur could be a composite based on multiple real leaders whose stories were merged into a legendary hero. I would tend to think Arthur is probably based on some real life people, but then it was blended over time into this like mythology of King Arthur through the telephone game over the years. And every book that came out added a little more, a little more flavor to the story. And over time, we have who we now know as King Arthur. So what are you finding on Shakespeare?
The Google result said he was a person. I'm going to keep looking.
Well, Google's right then. It's always right.
Maybe. Maybe. I haven't gone to the conspiracies yet.
So before we end this episode on King Arthur, I'm going to go into some of the crazy stories that surround King Arthur and the years after. So the first one is called the Ghostly Boat of Avalon. In Somerset folklore, particularly around the misty Somerset levels near Glastonbury, locals since the 13th century have reported seeing a spectral boat gliding through the marshes at dusk or during heavy fog. The boat, described as black with tattered sails, carries a silent crowned figure believed to be Arthur, escorted by shadowy women, possibly Morgan Le Fay and her enchantresses. Witnesses claim the boat vanishes into the mist near Glastonbury Tor, leaving an icy chill and whispers in the air. Some accounts recorded in the 19th century oral traditions describe the boat as emitting a low, mournful wail, and those who approach it feel paralyzed or lose time, waking hours later with no memory. A 17th century tale claims a fisherman who followed the boat was found dead, his face frozen in terror. This is all tied to Arthur's disappearance to Avalon because the boat reinforces the idea of a supernatural journey to the hidden realm, with Glastonbury's marshes as a liminal space where the living and dead intersect. So that's a pretty terrifying story.
Yeah. I'm glad it's not real.
Or is it?
It could be.
The next story I read about was called The Fairy Hill of Glastonbury Tor. So Glastonbury Tor is linked to Avalon. It's known in local folklore as a fairy hill housing Arthur's sleeping spirit and his knights. Since medieval times, tales describe travelers hearing ghostly hoofbeats or clashing swords beneath the Tor at midnight. A 15th century legend tells of a monk who entered a cave on the Tor seeking Arthur, only to emerge raving about shadow knights with glowing eyes who drove him out with unearthly screams. Modern accounts, 20th century, report seeing spectral figures in armor on the Tor's slopes during fog, vanishing when approached. Some claim the Tor's springs, like Chalice Well, bubble with a red glow at night, tied to Arthur's blood or a demonic presence guarding his rest. A 1920s story describes a hiker trapped in a looping path on the Tor, hearing whispers urging him to join the king until dawn broke. So
Most people think he was one person.
Shakespeare?
Yes.
Okay. So there must be a fringe belief that it was like a bunch of writers.
Yeah, it's called group theory or something like that.
Interesting.
So-
Yeah, I had never heard that, I guess.
I read it in a headline, probably from like, I don't know, some website that's not a real news site.
So the next wild story from the King Arthur tale is the Phantom Knights of Cadbury Castle. So Cadbury Castle, a Somerset hill fort and potential Camelot, is steeped in folklore claiming Arthur and his knights sleep in a hollow hill ready to ride out. Since the 16th century, locals have reported chilling encounters, phantom hoofbeats echoing on stormy nights, or ghostly knights in silver armor galloping across the ramparts, their faces skeletal or obscured by the mist. A 19th century tale recounts a sheep herder who saw a king in a golden crown leading a spectral host, only to vanish into the hill, leaving scorched marks on the grass. Some stories describe an oppressive silence before sightings, with animals refusing to approach the hill fort. A 1960s account claims a camper heard swords clashing inside the earth, followed by a voice whispering, "Not yet," in his ear. Another tale warns of entering Cadbury's hidden gate at midnight, traps you with Arthur's ghosts forever. So, another terrifying story. So don't go through the gate at midnight.
Yeah.
Another story around Arthur is the cursed seekers of the Holy Grail. So the Holy Grail quest, as depicted in the Vulgate cycle and in Mallory's books, includes terrifying tales of knights encountering supernatural protectors. One 14th century romance describes a knight unnamed who entered a chapel perilous, seeking the Grail, only to face a demonic hand wielding a flaming spear that burned his companion to ash. Another tale from the Questel Saint Grail tells of a knight lured by false Grail vision, a glowing cup held by a beautiful maiden who transforms him into a serpent demon, dragging him into the chasm.
At the Castle Anthrax? That's in the movie. Search for the Holy Grail.
Is that
Monty Python?
Oh, Monty Python.
Yeah. They have the Grail light on. He's like, I saw the Grail. And they're like, oh, we must have left the light on. And it was like a...
I'll have to
in the
rewatch
sky.
that.
It's so good.
So folklore around Glastonbury linked to the Grail via some of these old books include stories of seekers vanishing in the levels marshes after seeing blood red light. So a 17th century legend claims a monk who sought the Grail in the Tor cave was found with his eyes burned out, muttering about angels with claws. These protectors, demons, spectral knights, or cursed maidens punish the unworthy with death or madness. So you've got a lot of these crazy stories. There's a few more I won't cover just to speed this along because we could talk all night about King Arthur. So what was
people getting killed by spectral guardians trying to find the Grail?
So yeah, there really was a lasting legacy of King Arthur. So his legend was codified in all of these medieval texts that we talked about, and starting in the 1100s, going through to modern times. So the Round Table, Excalibur, and the Grail quest became archetypes for heroism, unity, spiritual pursuit, influencing countless stories across genres. Arthur embodies ideals of justice, leadership, hope, serving as a symbol of British identity and resistance, especially during times of crisis. So, medieval times, world wars. His prophecy as the once and future king fuels myths of returning savior, resonating in, folklore. Avalon, Camelot, the Grail have become shorthand for lost utopias, unattainable ideals, and mystical quests permeating art, poetry, and philosophy. Arthur's story still thrives even into modern times. You had the movie Excalibur in 1981, King Arthur, Legend of the Sword in 2017, which terrible movie. You had the TV show Merlin, 2008 to 2012, which actually was a pretty darn good TV show. And even video games, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which I did play a little bit of. Adapting his legend.
Merlin is reading books in every single depiction that I have found.
Smart guy.
Yeah, he's just contemplating life and learning spells.
So yeah, it's a crazy story. They still have festivals in Glastonbury that do reenactments and tourism at sites.
It's actually Merlin and King Arthur, and they're just immortal.
Yeah, right. Now, I would how they did Alien versus Predator?
Yes.
What if they did Merlin versus Gandalf?
That'd be pretty good.
Who would win?
Gandalf.
Gandalf.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Gandalf. Gandalf the gray or Gandalf the white?
Oh. I think the white's
The white.
powerful, yeah.
I think so. I think if he was Gandalf the gray, it'd be an even fight.
Right. So what's your theory of Arthur before we wrap up? You think it's real, fake, a mix?
I think it is lore intended to win a psychological battle with the enemy.
Okay.
There's too much. There's too much. I mean, maybe it was based off of an actual person.
Yeah.
So it might not have even been a king. Maybe there's, it's kind of like telling fish stories. The fish gets a little bit bigger each time. So if people are regaling tales of a battle and there's a guy there that just stood out in any type of way, they're going to tell that story. And they're like, who was he? He must have been a king. That's, I feel like it's kind of like that. And, it's almost like he was protected by a wizard. He didn't get hit with any arrows and won every sword fight. Like in telephone, as you said before, it's telephone in 800 AD.
Yeah.
Or 5th and 6th century.
Word of mouth.
Yeah, the books were 800 AD. But yeah, word of mouth, I feel like it was probably an over-exaggerated fish story that lasted centuries.
Yeah, I think if you got down to the base underlying story, I bet it was based on a real person or a mixture of real-life figures. And I would even go as far to say is they're probably not the names that we know of, but Camelot probably was a real place. Probably wasn't named Camelot.
Yeah.
But I bet it was a real place.
Mm-hmm.
The Grail, I could even see the Knights of the Round Table being a real thing. Maybe not.
Yeah, round tables existed.
Yeah, that's true.
So we assume the knights would sit at them occasionally.
And I can even go as far as to say I could imagine a king hearing about something in this time period and hearing about a Grail or something like that and sending people out to find it.
Oh yeah, quests were huge back then.
I can imagine that happening, and maybe this story is loosely
and
based.
as you're looking for it for your entire life, you'll die in some weird way on the way, and it'll be like, oh, everyone that goes to the Grail dies. It's like, well, when you look forever.
Yeah. And like you said, I think these are probably all based on real things at one
Yeah,
point.
I think so.
But then the lore, and you just over hundreds of years of people telling word of mouth, and every time a writer writes a new book about it, he adds something to it.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Never let a good story get facts in the way.
yeah. And I think that's how we got to today's version of King Arthur. It probably was a real warrior from that time period, not named King Arthur.
Yeah.
And the Knights of the Round Table probably were a real group of knights, not named that.
Especially circumference.
Circumference. Can't forget about Knight Circumference. But yeah, I think obviously most of it is just a cool story.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great story. I
but-
love the movie A Kid in King Arthur's Court.
Yeah.
Always have.
And yeah, I think it's a cool story, and maybe we'll be proven wrong someday, and they'll find, the skeleton of Merlin, and
It'll be floating.
it'll be floating. And Excalibur.
Yeah, doing
they'll find the
something
sword.
magical.
I didn't even really cover Excalibur.
Yeah, getting stuck in this. Well, not in the stone. It was given to him by the Lady of the Lake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's one of my favorite scenes of almost any movie, when Arthur's explaining to a peasant why he's a king. And the peasant said they don't have a king. They're like an autonomous collective. And he's explaining like the system of government that they're ruled by. It's my favorite. Some what retort threw a sword at you doesn't make you king. All right, that's it. Thanks again for tuning into our show. We appreciate all of you for listening and sharing Locations Unknown with your friends and family. Be sure to like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, where you can find all the videos of each episode. Also, if you'd like to support the show monetarily, please visit our website or Facebook store to buy some cool swag. And additionally, you can subscribe to our Patreon account on YouTube and on Apple, where you have access to special events and additional shows for paid customers only. And lastly, when enjoying the beauty of nature, whether backpacking, camping, or simply taking a walk, always remember to leave no trace. Thanks, and we will see you all next time.